Hey everybody, thanks for tuning into today's podcast. With me today is Dan Dierking, and as usual, this is our quarterly update for NCREIF. And as we've mentioned in the past, NCREIF is involved in doing an awful lot of the industry's work, and a lot of it happens behind the scenes, and most of you probably aren't aware of all the things that they're doing. So we thought we'd start these quarterly updates to share with you some of the initiatives that NCREIF is working on that you all benefit from. And hopefully this is informational and useful to you. So Dan, welcome back to the show. Good to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me again, Jeff. I appreciate it.
So today we thought we'd focus on the NCREIF query tool. First of all, why don't we describe what is it? What is the NCREIF query tool?
Yeah, so the NCREIF query tool is our primary online analytical tool that sits on top of our property database. So as we've talked about, right, NCREIF's been collecting property data for over 40 years, and this query tool is really what gives you the ability to drill down into what's inside of all of that data. So on top of course, you can get NPI returns. There's a variety of other measures inside of there. You can get cash flow metrics, NOI growth, occupancy, leverage returns, value per square foot, CapEx detail, expense detail, just a variety of metrics that really give you the insight into that property data.
And is the tool really designed for self-service or for guided workflows where somebody's guiding you through the process?
Yeah, we actually serve both of those modes, right? So we have what we call a normal mode, which is a little bit more of a guided workflow. So it gives you the ability, it says basically step one, what database are you trying to query? Step two would be what are your queries? Then what are you filtering? What are you grouping by? And it kind of walks you through the process. Whereas then we also have the self-service mode. The query tool today, I tell people all the time, its greatest strength and yet its greatest burden is its flexibility. And that really comes with the self-service or what we call the advanced mode, where you're really building a basic, query statement with a select clause, a where clause, and everything in between on trying to build that statement using SQL, an actual coding language. So it provides both modes.
So who would be the people that would typically be using this and for what purpose? What are they usually trying to figure out? What questions are they typically trying to answer? What
Yeah,
would be an example?
yeah. So, historically, NCREIF was, really built around researchers and really trying to dig into the data. And the query tool provided that. So certainly one of our target users would be researchers, but the industry has certainly advanced, right? So today we have individual pension funds obviously digging in and trying to understand how returns are doing, how their portfolio is performing against certain areas and certain sectors. But we also have, in addition to managers, we have consultants who log in and run all the time, who are advising both managers and understanding how managers are performing. Academics are using it as well. So they really gives them the ability, depending on kind of who you are within the industry, that flexibility allows you to really improve the role that you're performing.
Let's say I was in sales or marketing. Would there be something that there for me as well or not?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, acquisitions, for example, would be able to kind of log in and understand what's taking place in certain markets, certain sectors, as they're getting ready to potentially tour properties or even make decisions at an investment committee level. That data would certainly be used and help you understand what's taking place.
So what kind of a learning curve is there for getting up to speed to be able to really become proficient in using this? Is there some onboarding or training provided for new users?
Yeah, I mean, there is certainly a little bit of a learning curve just in general in understanding what data NCREIF can provide, right? We can produce an index with basically 5 data points, but we capture 80 different data points per property. So the query tool is really that primary avenue to access all of that information. So a little bit of a learning curve in trying to first understand, what is NCREIF providing and why. We certainly have documentation and manuals that will assist with that. But from a staff perspective, we do take a lot of pride into working with existing and new members to use the query tool. So it starts really from day one when you become a member. Our member services director will give you an overview, some basic training to get you on board. If more advanced training is needed, we'll provide that. Certainly within our data team, we'll go through and kind of walk you through what are the different queries and why they're important. And even if you want more advanced query training, we will go ahead and schedule that as well, sometimes even on site. So it really depends how you want to use it and how fast you want to come up to speed. We'll work with you because we are flexible.
So let's assume I'm wanting to run some queries. What are some of the filters or criteria I can use to execute those queries?
Yeah. So a lot of it is the basic ones, and then there's also some advanced ones. So you could imagine if you're just thinking about MPI returns. Obviously, we produce those numbers at the national property type and regional level. But we also have the divisions, right? Every region has two divisions. So you can break out by there. Of course, there's subtype information. A lot of times, while sector information is important, the subtype information is more valuable. But I think the bulk of what the query tool is providing is really that metro or CBSA analysis, right? If you want to see what's going on in Chicago apartments in a certain zip code, for example, you can do it. That is the main filter that really comes into play. And then if you have a more advanced use for the tool, of course, you could be running it for really all sorts of different analysis, right? You could be looking at properties that have been appraised the last 4 quarters. There's a statement that you could run for that. If you want to do advanced same store querying, you could do some of that. So there's a lot of functionality that's available to you, but the main focus around the filters and grouping is really around that metro and sector and subsector area.
So if I'm trying to figure out how my fund or my separate accounts or whatever it is have performed against, or my company has performed against the index, I can do that. But I can't really see how my competitors have done on a competitor by competitor basis.
Correct.
I think you guys have always taken the stance that you want to protect the confidentiality of the data that's being
Yeah.
presented and really aggregate data. So you're providing aggregate benchmarks that people can get value out of.
Yeah. And that's a great point. And often, it's just part of our culture here that everything is aggregated and confidential. That sometimes we, lose sight of it because we don't do anything that's not at an aggregate level and meets our masking criteria. So, for example, any aggregate that we produce inside the query tool, or really any measure within NCREIF, must have at least 3 properties contributing to the aggregate from at least 3 managers.
So you can't drill down to a property level, but you can drill down to a three or more property level to get.
Correct. Correct. Yeah, exactly. Must be at the aggregate level.
Gotcha. Okay. And then I know that you guys are constantly working on and tweaking this. What features are you working on? What enhancements are on the roadmap right now?
Yeah, so we're actually getting ready to roll out a new query tool in spring of 2026 that will coincide with our new commercial submission and delivery system. So the new query tool will have a lot of similar functions, but there'll also be a lot of new functions associated with it. First and foremost, the usability is going to be improved. What we have in place today is fairly old. While it works, there are definitely newer usability technologies that will make the process in running a query a lot easier. This will include being able to save queries inside of your profile, so you don't have to rebuild them all the time. We're going to work on ultimately pushing queries out to you, so you'll have the ability to, almost schedule them. This way, it's almost like a custom reporting tool that you can start to leverage. We'll also have some more advanced features. One of the challenges within the query tool today is you can really only query at each individual quarter. You can't query, say in Q3 a certain criteria and Q2 a certain criteria. So we'll have multiple querying across multiple quarters. And ultimately, all of this will be supported with an API. So we're really trying to make the query tool our primary delivery method for all of our members.
And when you say API, the meaning, the ability to kind of access this data, pull it into your own database, and manipulate it for your own purposes. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. So instead of, logging into the NCREIF website and entering and running your old query, the API will allow for system-to-system querying where you can have your internal system run a query against our database and bring the data back into your system, essentially bypassing our interface. This allows you to get the data right back into your system.
So, are there plans to incorporate AI or machine learning for smarter queries and the ability to conduct, say, natural plain language queries and things of that nature?
Yeah, we certainly have the plan. It won't be within phase one of next year, but the goal is to get to the point where we now have the technology and the framework to support the AI modeling and the natural language modeling to support these types of queries. So, we had talked earlier about how you need to be able to write a SQL statement. Ultimately, we want to get to the point where you can say, hey, show me returns for Chicago apartments where the building is more than 10 floors and has been around for 15 years. I'm just making stuff up along the way. But that then gives you the ability to really pull in that data, and we can harness that in a much more natural fashion than some of the technical requirements that come with using the tool today.
We'd be able to do things like say, what have been the drivers of performance in multifamily and what have been the things that have inhibited multifamily performance and come up with an answer to that?
Yeah, we've talked about that for sure. That would need to be kind of that second layer of the AI. Analyzing the data versus just querying it back and building insights off of it is something we want to do. But we got to get to more of that natural querying first, which then allows us to get to the insight level.
Now, my understanding is the only people that get access to this data, this query tool, is NCREIF members. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah. So you must be a NCREIF member to have access to the query tool. And that would include all of our different membership categories from investment managers, professionals, investors, and academics.
And so you do have categories of membership for non-data contributors, yes?
We do. Yeah. So that would be our professional members. So this would be, everybody essentially who's not an investor and who's not a manager. These would be your professional firms. So it could be consultants, fund admins, research groups,
Could be
accountants.
investors, private wealth advisors.
It could be. Yeah. We've actually started to talk about that at a much more higher strategy level to see where we may be able to serve that larger group of investments within the commercial real estate side because it's growing and there's opportunity there.
Yeah, I mean, from our counts, there's over 40 traditional institutional investment managers who are currently or in the process of developing product for distribution in the private wealth channel. And
Yeah.
whole different set of rules, whole different set of elements, but they still need to benchmark the results. And
Yeah.
so, having access to NCREIF data might be really helpful. And I imagine over time, you'll start to collect that data as well. You
Yeah.
know, Garbage in, garbage out has always been a problem with all databases. How do you ensure data quality and completeness with this data that you're running?
Yeah. So we have a whole process around the validation that it really starts with the ingestion of the property data that comes in on a quarterly basis. We have a data team that helps first and foremost managers submit data into the system if there's issues. So we support them on the process. But as soon as that data gets entered into the database, we have a multi-step validation process that looks at all of the individual properties by manager. So the first thing we do, for example, when we take the data in is we'll run an outlier report on just returns on individual properties. So any property that generates a return plus or minus 15%, we'll look at it. And if there's questions, we have a relationship with every one of our managers where we'll talk to them and try to understand what's taking place with that property because we want to make sure there's a story behind each of these outliers. Once we're comfortable with that, we have a variety of other validation reports that we run through. We look at ratios of CapEx to market value, NOI to market value. We look at every individual sold property and the impact that they're having on the returns. We also look at properties that have a large impact on the return. Some of these multi-billion-dollar properties can sway an index. And then definitely when you get into some of these more smaller groupings, if you've got a multi-billion-dollar mall in a certain area, that's going to dominate that area, and we want to make sure that those properties are reviewed on an individual basis. And there's a variety of other validation that takes place. So validation and accuracy is very important to us, but in our minds, it starts with the relationship with the manager, making sure they understand the expectations and working with us each quarter.
And have you been working with managers to flow data directly and avoid, downloads and uploads of data so that there's just a stream of data between you connections or not?
Yeah, we're talking about doing that as well. That would come with the new submission system. So as many of our managers have advanced in both their technology and our technology, it allows us to bring the two together and streamline the process. The other thing we've been doing is we have a relationship with Yardi. Yardi is responsible for many of our managers' systems when it comes to performance measurement data and accounting data. So we've been working with them. They understand what our template requirements are. They understand what our data requirements are. And they're going to have a direct link and a direct download for their clients that are mutual members to allow for a more sufficient submission process.
How about other platforms like Juniper Square? Anything cooking there in terms of direct?
Yeah, we've talked to them, but not to that level yet. Not because there's not something there, but really we've been focused on the performance and the accounting data at this point.
Yeah, understood. Do you think that you'll get into operational data at some point in time down the road?
I think so. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of momentum to do that. Some of our challenges, while it may have been a little slow, is we've been just trying to put the new technology in place, and that's been first and foremost. We're confident the new system and our new technology partner will allow for a much more efficient development process. We'll be able to scale and meet member needs and really deliver value back in a much more efficient pace.
Cool. Well, you just completed your meeting down in Hollywood, Florida, not just down the road from where I live. Thank you for allowing us to come. We really enjoyed it, Jim
Yeah.
Kennedy and I. Over 600 people there.
We did. It was a large event for us, our largest number of attendees in the history of NCREIF, which is great for us. It's certainly a sign that our membership is interested and we're providing value. But I think more importantly, as you think about the mission of NCREIF and advancing the industry is advancing with all sorts of different types of firms and organizations that want to be part of this industry. And for us, we're a cornerstone to that. And we're grateful that we're able to put that on and bring the industry together.
The bottom line here is that, the glamour positions the industry are the capital raisers, the deal makers, the senior executives. But most of the work gets done by the people that are really members of NCREIF. And there's a tremendous amount of work that's being done on issues like standardization, these systems that we're talking about here, database, making information accessible and more useful to people, that folks should really realize and take advantage of because it's all there for the benefit of everybody in the industry.
Yeah,
Thanks for the
absolutely.
work that you do and all your members.
Yeah, thank you. It's great.
See you again in another quarter when we get our next quarterly update.
You got it. I appreciate Jeff. And as always, thanks for the support and time.
You betcha. And thanks for tuning in, everybody. Take care. Happy holidays, by the way.